Hey, good morning, everybody. Today's going to be one of the last videos of the 2025-2026 school year. So I'm going to do a demonstration of this collect and avoid template that I've given you on Canvas so that you can add your own artwork and your own terrain and materials and everything. So it's going to be a bit of a review for some of the things that you're going to see in Unity, but also if you wanted to use a template to make a pretty quick game that you could build in Unity without having to add the scripts and everything, this is one that you could use. So the first thing is I'm going to be making a new project. So when you look right here, again, this is the Unity Hub. This is where you start all of your projects. And then you're going to have a list of all of your previous projects. So when I click New Project, I'm going to get a bunch of options. Typically, you're going to be going with either this is going to be a 3D project, so you're either going to go with Universal, which has the most customization options. It can export to the most systems. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, but there can be occasionally some compatibility issues that I've encountered over the years. So I typically, if I'm building like a template, I'll use the built-in pipeline just to get started for the gray boxing or white boxing. You also will see the HD. This is for if you're doing projects that require a lot of like high-end graphics and you want a lot of details. This is going to be the one that you'd want to pick. I've never, to be honest with you, I've never really used this one as most of my projects for school have been built-in templates. You'll also see like here, the core examples are the ones that just have the basic ones. You also have sample. So you could, if you wanted to try out each of the pipelines, you could go into each one. And then you have the learning templates, which are like the essentials pathway we did, the micro game platformer, and the FPS game that we did. So I'm going to go into core and then I'm going to look at for the 3D built-in pipeline. It's going to say my project, so I'm just going to call this the collectible demo like this. And then once I'm ready, again, you can set the pathway if you want to. I usually just leave it as default for what we have at school. And then I'm going to hit create project. Now, again, this does take a bit of time. So you do need to be patient. So I usually don't do a lot of stuff while it's loading just so it can run a little bit faster. But once it's here again, you'll see this, but you'll also see this screen that's going to be loading. Don't click this a bunch more times. You'll get an error and it can just cause some issues. So I'm going to pause the video while this loads and then I'll be right back. All right, so I am back in my scene. You can see right here that this is blank, so there's nothing in here at this point. You'll see these assets that are right here, which is your scene. Your default scene is this one, and then you have this input system. So the next step that I'm going to want to do if I'm just starting from kind of the very beginning in Canvas is I'm going to see this template that's right here. Again, I have the directions that are right here. And then you're going to see this asset package. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click download. And then you'll see this option here, which is to save it. You can save it in your downloads folder, or you can pick another folder if you want. So you'll click whichever one you want. And then after that, we're going to import it into our scene. So I'll show you how to do that next. Okay, so now that I'm in my scene, I've downloaded the file. I'm going to right click. You're going to see this option that says import package, and then you're going to pick custom package. And then once you're here, I saved it in my downloads folder and I'm going to double click it. You're going to see this dialog box that has all of the stuff that I've included in the scene right here. And then I'm just going to select import. Because there's not a lot of things that are in here, this won't take too much time to import usually. You'll see it load again. I try to avoid doing a lot of things while it's importing all of these scenes, and I'll show you a couple of the messages. So you might get this error. I just hit reload, and then it will give you this scene like this. Now, there are going to be a couple of other things to keep in mind. So the way that this game works as of now is, at least with this template, is you've got a character that's right here. Okay, you've got a camera, and usually kind of swing this around just because this is the view the camera sees. It makes it a little bit easier. And then again, you've got this. So this camera is attached to this, these objects. And if you look at the game here, this will tell you how many you've collected. And then this is going to be the goal. The one thing that I need to add when I made the package, I guess it didn't save, is the cylinder. So I can kind of go through that process really quick. But I wanted to show you something else too. So when you hit play, especially when you first import it, you might get this error. It looks like this, and you'll see it at the bottom. It says you're trying to read input using UD Engine input class, but you have switched active input handling to basically you have to change this in the player settings. So the way that you do this, I'm going to hit save really quick, is I'm going to go to edit. I'm going to go to my project settings, which are right here. And then you're going to see this option that says player, and you look in other settings. And it's towards the middle, I would say, of this. And you're going to see this option that says input system package new. And I'm not sure, usually I just go with both. I'm not really sure why that's not the default, but with Unity, I think they're deprecating that input handling system, and you just have this option in the future. So I just picked both. You'll see this option that says Unity editor must be restarted. I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. So at that point, your editor is going to restart. This is normal. This is what's expected. This does this every time. But then whenever you go into the game, you'll be able to move around, and then I can show you a quick demo of what that looks like. So you've got, again, this is reloading. This usually doesn't take as long as it takes to like start a new project. And you can see like just in the time that I've been talking, it basically reloaded. Okay. You'll see this as soon as you open it again, you're going to see this not recommended for new projects, but for our purposes, we're just going to use it like this. You'll also see this hazard sign again. For this project, I just ignore it. If I was making like a full project I was going to sell or something, I would definitely use the new one. But you can see that I can move around, and now when I'm collecting things, it's going to give me this. It's going to give me the number. So the way I've set up this sample game, and you can move the camera around if you want, you can keep it like this, but you have to collect 10 objects in order for it to give you a win screen. And you can see it's tough to see because I haven't changed the font, but it's here. You can see it says you win, and I've collected 10 of them. So the way this game works is you basically have these spheres that I've listed as collectibles. And you can see on the left side that I've organized them just into an empty game object. And then I have these collectibles here. So if I go into this folder, I have my prefabs and I have my collectible. And then I also have my goal, which is right there. One of the things you'll want to do, and I'll go through this process with, because you'll see it says hazard is not defined. Is you have to tag them. So when you add this right here, you'll see it says goal, and then I have collectible. And any of the objects that are going to fulfill that role in the game are going to have these tags. So I'm going to make sorry, I'm going to make my hazard object, which based on my script is going to make me just restart the level each time. So the first thing that I'm going to do, and you'll see that it's under prefabs, but I'm just going to make one right here. So I'm going to do create 3D object. I'm going to pick cylinder, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on it, and I'll move it up some so I can see it here. And then what I can do is I'm going to basically just tag this as hazard. So if I don't see that tag here, which you won't in this package file, I'm going to click add tag. It's going to ask for a new one, and I'm going to put hazard, and then I'm going to hit save. So now when I go back to this, I can click hazard. And because my scripting has already kind of fulfilled this function, when I run into it, it's going to basically make me restart the level. Now, a pretty common mistake that people make is once it's tagged like this, and I'll go through the scripting in a second, you want to make sure that you click trigger right here, because that's going to let the computer know or let the game know that basically when these two colliders interact, it's going to run a method. So let's go ahead and test it. Again, I have this here. I hit play and I can run over here. I'm going to go ahead and collect some of these. You can see it says one. And then if I run into it, hopefully I will restart and it works. Okay. So there it is. And kind of an interesting thing too. And I didn't set this up. If you wanted to add it, you could, but I just had it keep going. So if I've got, yeah, this camera angle is a little bit difficult to work with because I didn't set up too many advanced movements. I was able to move around the screen. But if I get to 10 right here, and then I go in, it says you win. But if I run into one of the hazards right here, it's going to make me restart still. So now my game effectively works. Everything is here to make a full game. There's a victory condition, there's a hazard, there's an obstacle, which doesn't have any like properties, but it does have, makes you restart the level so you can lose. And then you have a collectible, which is given to you right here. Now, the one thing I want to kind of show you is how to manage some of this to make it maybe a little bit more complete and more like a full game. So if I go into my folder here, I have a prefab, and I'm going to go ahead and make my cylinder a prefab. And I'm just going to drag this in. Now, what I can do is I can just add all of these cylinders like this. So now I have a few different goals that I can include here, um, and it'll do the same thing. So if I hit play, once I've made that prefab, again, I can go in and I can just hit any one of them, and it's going to make me restart the level. So this is also useful to make once you have an object, especially if it's going to repeat functions a lot. It's something that you can do to save yourself a lot of time. You don't have to go to each one, tag it hazard. You can just add it. Now you will see this option too that says overrides. What that means is like maybe you've added some of these objects and then you change it to a prefab later. What you can do is click override, and then any of those objects that had those properties like this, you can go in and override and then it will have that function. Again, you know that it's a prefab because it has this blue color right here that you can see. So that's how you would know it. Again, to organize this, maybe make it this a little bit better. I'm going to hit create empty. I'm going to call this enemies, or I'm just going to call it hazard because that's what I tagged it as. And then I can just go here. If you click one, hold shift, and then click the next one, it highlights all of them, and then I can just drag them in here. So now this looks a little bit easier to manage overall. Some other things in my game that I've set up, and I'm going to review a couple of like terrain and things like that just to make it a good overall review, is you have this what's called a canvas here. So what the canvas is basically this element here. This is an override. So this basically goes over your frame when you're playing, and you can click it and you can change properties about it. So for instance, if you click here on the canvas, you can see that it says counter. And I have this as red text. For the win text, you'll notice it's not checked off. The reason why is because there's conditions that have to be met before the win text can be enabled. So you start the game with it disabled, which is a Boolean variable. It's either true or false. So I've started with it being false. Again, I can change that color. When we saw the demo, it was, it wasn't very visible. So I'm going to make it like this green color now, just to make it a little bit easier. You can also change the font size if you want. You have a lot of options here. Some other things too, just to note about the scripts, although, the scripts are given to you, is you've got a player script, which allows your character to move. So that's this script right here. You've got this collector script, which is how you are collecting objects. And you'll notice again, that this is it's the condition on trigger enter, which means like when I set that trigger on that hazard, what that means is that when they collide, it's going to do this. So it says if other compare tag collectible. So again, if I go to my collectibles, you'll see that this tag is here. So that's what it's looking for. If it sees that tag and there's a collision that occurs, so that trigger click that we did means that it's okay, I'm looking for something to happen whenever these two collide. This is what's going to happen. Collected plus plus means it adds to the number. It's going to get rid of the game object, which is right here. And then it's going to add to this total, which is on this system right here. This is just an empty game object where you can store this script, which is right here. And so that's how this entire game basically works. Now, a couple of other things. I'm going to go to my capsule. You'll see that this is a child object. The camera is a child object of this. But if I click on the camera, I can move it like closer and you can see in the game that it looks like this. Or what some people will do is they'll move it further away like this, and then they will use this rotate button, and it's kind of tough to see this, but you can see it like that, and that will enable it to look like a little bit different. So these tools here, again, this is just to move around the scene. This is to move the actual object. It's your transform tool. Again, a quick way to remember this is green. It's the y-axis. It goes up and down like a tree. So green for leaves. This is blue, which is your z-axis. Basically, this is back and forth. So that's how I remember it, blue for back and forth. And then red is your x-axis, and that is left and right. So I remember red for right. Okay. So you can have this look however you want. Again, this isn't a very advanced script. This is a little bit off right here, but it's something that you can move around. Again, I can go in here and I can move these around individually. But the one thing that I think is good to practice here is with materials. So I usually make a folder. I'm just going to call it materials. And I'm just gonna make a couple of really quick materials that you can use as a way to add some different elements to your scene. So if you right click, you go to create, and then you'll see this option for materials. I'm just gonna we'll make this one red, something easy to see. And then I'm gonna call this hazard. I'm gonna make another material. I'm gonna make it kind of like a goldish color, something like that. I'm going to call this goals, kind of like a coin. Actually, I don't want to call it that. I'm going to call it collectible. And then I'm going to make another one. The last one I'm going to make is going to be called, make it this blue color, and I'm going to call that gold. This. All right. So for the goal, I can just click and drag like this, just add it onto it. All right, a few things about the color. If you click on it, you're going to see these channels right here. So I can use these values. You can also see I can change it to different values, or I can change it to the hexadecimal code right here. So if you have a color that you want to use, you can try that. You'll also see, and I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it better, but if you have this alpha channel, this is effectively how you make it transparent. So you'll see this option. It says rendering mode up here. If you change it to transparent, again, I'll go back to my material. You can go in and you can see if I change this alpha color here, it's going to make it more or less transparent. So it's easier to see. Okay. I'm not going to keep it that way, but that's how you would change the values. Some other things too, just a quick review. When you look at your camera, you see a few options here, like you have these backgrounds, so you can change the background color of the camera if you want. You also have your skybox. Your culling mask means it's going to show everything on the screen. So you can see here that it'll just show everything that's in the screen. But if you want to take things away to only render certain parts, like maybe during the game you don't want to have a user interface or something like that, you can pick it from this list. So you see like UI, maybe I don't want the UI to show in certain scenes, and I can tell it not to. The projection is one that I think we want to pay attention to. So perspective looks like this. It's a 3D. You can see some depth to the shapes, even if our game doesn't have a lot going on here. But if I change this to orthographic, notice that it's very like two-dimensional. So this is not what we would want for this type of game. But if you have a game that is maybe like a little bit more top down, kind of like this, and I want to change it to orthographic, you can see that that is okay. It's a lot more two-dimensional. There's not as much perspective, but it's an option too, especially if you've got a lot going on in your scene. Sometimes it's good to have the orthographic perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and just move this down like I had it. And I'm going to show you the prefab element. So if I go into my collectibles right here, right, this is my prefab. This is what's called prefab mode. You can see it's all by itself. It says collectible up here. And then it has all of your elements to it. So if I wanted to change the collider, I could do that here. But the reason I wanted to show you the materials is because if I add this to this material right here, if I go back to my scene out of prefab mode, then they all become this color. The same will happen if I go into my cylinder, which is going to be my hazard. Um, and if I go ahead and go back to my materials, I can change this to this. And then when I go back, all of them are now red. So I can change, like, I can make a lot of really quick changes throughout the game really quickly, especially if I've already added things and made them prefabs. I would personally recommend if you have an object that you think you may reuse, just go ahead and make it a prefab. It'll save you some time as you're building the final game. All right, now the last thing is, again, maybe I want to add some lighting to this scene. So if I go to this plus sign, you're going to see light. You can also go up here with game objects and then you can create them here. I usually just use this plus sign, but whichever way you prefer. We already have a directional light, which is this light that's in the sky up here. You can see when you open the scene, it's right there. But I'm going to go ahead and add the other lights. So it's under light, and then you have spotlight and point light. Just as an easy illustration, point light is a globe. So you can see it right here. If I go into this, it's there. Okay. And it may be, I usually just hit reset. It'll put this like right in the middle of the scene. And then you can change the color. So again, maybe we're going to make this kind of like, we'll make it like a green light. I'm going to go ahead. You also see this option that says shadow type, which is no shadows, hard shadows, soft shadows. I'm going to do hard shadows because it's easy to see, but hard shadows means there's a very clear line between where the light is and where the shadow is, but there's no gradation. If I pick soft shadows, that's going to be much more like real life. But it's also, you have to remember, lighting takes a lot of rendering power. So you have to kind of decide what you want to use, or if you want to use it at all. In some cases you don't put shadows at all. Like for instance, I'll go to my directional light. I've picked no shadows, but I'm just going to pick hard shadows. And then you can see what it looks like. So there's these shadows that are right here. As another illustration, I'll just show you what soft shadows looks like. And it's tough to see from a distance, but when you zoom in, you can see that it's kind of a blurry line between when the shadow really gets like to its darkest point versus when it isn't. So you can see that illustration right there. It's this clear line, whereas soft shadows, again, there's gradations there. So I'm going to leave this at hard shadows. I'm going to go to my light, my point light here. I'm going to change the intensity. I'm going to make it like 20. Actually, that's too much. I'm going to make it 10. And then you can see it again right here. It might be easier to see if I make a new material. So I'll make like a darker material since that's a lighter color, just so you can see it a little bit better. I'll just add it to the floor, and there it is. All right. So this light, again, it's not a physical light. It's just a light that's in the scene. So it's not actually like a point you would see. It's not like a light bulb, although the icon looks like it. You won't see that when you hit play. And again, if I go to the camera, you can see the shadows, but you can't see much else. Okay. The other lights, just to review them, if you go to your lights right here, the spotlight is like this. It looks like a cone. Same type of thing. You can adjust the cone a little bit right here, and I'll move this over some. So if you want to adjust it like its location, you can do that. You can make this look like this. The only other one that's different is if I go to this light here, you're going to see this one called an area light. It looks like I'll zoom in on it. It looks like a sort of a soft square shape, and then it has the light that's like this. Now, what this means is you are pre-rendering. So you're going to see this option that says baked only. These can be both. You can pre-render them. So you can see options here where it says mode real time, and then I can bake them and it'll save some rendering. But area lights can only have baked. And what that means is when I hit play on the screen, now this area light won't work, but when I hit play, that means as soon as I hit play, all of this stuff is getting rendered live. Like when I hit play, it starts with the lighting. The area light has to be pre-rendered, which means that when you pre-render it, it calculates where the light would be, how much it reflects. It does all of that before you hit play, and then it bakes it into this area right here. So I have demos about baked lighting specifically, but that's what the difference between real time and baked is. This area light can only be baked, whereas the point light and all of these other lights are real time lighting. Okay. The last thing that I want to talk about is the terrain. So I'm going to go ahead and just add some terrain really quickly. So we'll do 3D object. You're going to see terrain right here. And then again, this is a big area of land. So I might want to just move it over a little bit just so it's not really like super close to it's not overlapping anything. You can see that it's right here, so it's a little bit there's a bit of a gap. Since I don't have a jump, I'm gonna go ahead and move it back a little bit closer, maybe overlap it some. So the terrain tools again, this is your brush. You can see it says paint texture. I'm going to do raise or lower terrain, and then I can just start adding shapes like this. If you hold shift, if I zoom in some, if I hold shift, I can lower them a little bit. You also have this paint texture. So this is something we've done in the past. If you import like terrain textures, you can do edit terrain layer, create layer, and then you can find different layers that you want to use. So in this case, if I wanted to use this one, I just picked that as an example. You can see it right there and it changes it to this. So this is a terrain layer. And then if I wanted to add a new layer, I'll do just add layer. And then I can pick from there. It'll give me some other options if I want. And then I can paint over it. Okay. If I want to change anything about it, I can change this color right here. So maybe I want it to look like this. You have a lot of options with it, but again, there's different textures that you can get. It's pretty similar to adding materials, but if you make these, you can use the paint tool. Some other things you can pick here are you have trees. Again, these have to be imported. Typically, there is a tree editor, but it's not something I have a ton of experience with. But if you click edit trees, you can click add tree, and then you can find a tree. Um, I could pick one of these. I'm not going to because I don't want it to mess up the game. But you could pick a tree from there. The same with these grass textures. You do edit details, add detail mesh, and then you find a grass object that you want to use. And then you can have it look like this. So the nice thing is now that I have this, and I'll just show you a really quick example as we finish up, I can add these same elements to my game right here and then maybe I just moved my goal, which is right there. And again, I'm just kind of, there's no real design for this part, but you can see I move the goal over here. And so now when I hit play, I've got terrain that I can um, move around. I have my character right here. Now keep in mind, because my goal is all the way out here, and you can see my computer struggling a little bit to render this. But I have the goal right here. I have my shape. But if I go in to hit this now, but I don't have 10 objects, my game isn't going to work. So I have to get the 10 for the goal to display. So I'll show you that really quickly in the last section here. If I go to my script, you'll see that it has the player object, and then this is my collector. This is the condition that lets you win the game. So it says if other game tags, so it's if it's tagged goal, like I showed you before, this and symbol right here means if the collected variable is 10, which is the total that we set, then it's going to show that win screen, which is right here. Right. So this is how this game works. I know this was kind of a long video, but it does kind of cover all of the basics of using Unity. You have a template that you can use and go into. You could add your own shapes if you wanted to and tag them as goal or hazard or collectible. You could use all of those. You could go in and change the variable so that, again, if I go to my UI manager, you can change all of those things and you could make a full game from this. You could make different levels. So I hope this was helpful. This is one of the last videos of the year just for the basics of using Unity. Um, if you have any questions in class, you can always send me a message, or if you're not in my class, you can ask a teacher. But hopefully this is, a good starting point for you as you build your game in Unity. I think this is an amazing game engine. There's a lot that you can do with it. Even like simple things like this are great practice, and there's a lot of design you can do. So I hope you have a great rest of your year, and I'll see you in one more video, which is going to be about Minecraft.